Let's get one thing straight right from the start. I'm a nephrologist. I spend my days taking care of people whose kidneys are failing. I see the dialysis machines, the waiting lists for transplants, and the slow, creeping decline that happens when we ignore the root cause of chronic kidney disease. And I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, that the most common cause of this devastation is type 2 diabetes. It's not even close. The real paradox is that we approach this problem with a very medicalized lens: drugs, surgery, machines, and none of it actually stops the progression of the disease. It just manages the symptoms while the underlying problem gets worse. We're so focused on treating the disease that we've completely overlooked the cause: diet, and more specifically, the constant, unrelenting spike of insulin caused by what and when we eat. Now, this brings us to that morning ritual we all hold so dear: coffee. How many of you wake up, and before your feet even hit the floor, you're reaching for that cup of coffee? It's the fuel that gets you going. It's the social lubricant, the comfort, the routine. But what if I told you that your beloved morning coffee is actually damaging your kidneys? What if the very thing you're drinking to power through your day is in fact a contributing factor to the diabetes and kidney dysfunction that is quietly brewing inside you? That's a bold claim, and right now you might be feeling defensive. I get it. I'm not here to take away your coffee. I'm here to give you a new perspective on it, a perspective grounded in physiology and clinical observation. Because once you understand what's happening inside your body, you can take control. And I'm going to show you one simple thing you can do to fix it instantly. We have to start by talking about insulin. This is my core message. You've been told your whole life that obesity is about calories. You've been told that diabetes is a disease of high blood sugar. That is a fundamental misunderstanding, and it is causing millions of people to get sicker. Diabetes is a disease of high insulin. It is hyperinsulinemia that drives the entire metabolic syndrome train. Insulin resistance isn't the problem. It's a protective response to the problem, which is too much insulin. This happens through what we call the overflow paradigm. You eat a meal, especially one filled with carbohydrates and sugar, and your blood glucose spikes. The pancreas releases insulin to push that glucose into cells for energy. But your cells can only hold so much. They have a capacity. When they are full, overflowing, they start to resist the signal of insulin. They're saying, "I'm full, stop pushing more glucose in." So what happens? The pancreas, seeing that the blood sugar hasn't dropped, just pumps out more insulin to try and force the issue. And this viscous cycle of high insulin secretion and insulin resistance is the engine that powers obesity, fatty liver, and type 2 diabetes. Now, what does this have to do with your coffee? Coffee itself, black and pure, has very few calories and doesn't spike your insulin directly. The problem isn't the coffee, it's what you put in it, and more importantly, the timing. Most people aren't drinking bitter, black coffee. They're drinking sweetened lattes, mochas, and frappuccinos loaded with sugar, syrups, and milk. But let's assume you're a purist. You drink it black. Even then, we have a problem. In my practice, I see patients who believe they are fasting because they only had black coffee in the morning. But the real issue isn't just the calories, it's the metabolic effect. When you think about this from an evolutionary perspective, our bodies are designed to go through periods of feast and famine. The modern world has eliminated famine, and we are now in a state of constant feast. We eat from the moment we wake up until we go to bed, and this constant nutrition, this constant signaling to our bodies that we are in a growth phase, is what causes disease. Think about it. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, atherosclerosis, cancer, and even Alzheimer's disease. What are all these? They are diseases of too much growth. Atherosclerosis, for example, is the narrowing of the arteries. It's not just a simple plaque blockage. It's a disease of growth. The smooth muscle cells in the artery wall are stimulated to grow, and you get these white blood cells and foam cells piling up, creating that narrowing. It is a disease of excessive growth. So, every time you have that morning coffee, you're breaking a fast and revving up your metabolism, but you're not putting any food in. It's a state of starvation that triggers a stress response. causing your blood sugar to rise as your liver dumps glucose. This in turn signals your pancreas to release more insulin. Now, let's look at the science. There are studies showing that coffee can be protective for the kidneys, and there are studies showing it can be harmful. How can that be? We need to look deeper. A large body of research shows that moderate coffee consumption is often associated with a lower risk of chronic kidney disease. For example, Mendelian randomization studies, a powerful genetic technique that helps us understand cause and effect, have shown that drinking more coffee is associated with a higher estimated glomerular filtration rate, eGFR, which is a marker of better kidney function. One study found that an extra cup of coffee per day was causally linked to improved eGFR. These studies suggest a protective effect. They show that coffee intake is linked to a lower prevalence of CKD. It seems like good news, right? But here is where the timing comes in. A fascinating study published in 2024 looked at the timing of coffee consumption in diabetic patients. The results were striking. Diabetic patients who consumed coffee from dawn to forenoon, essentially, first thing in the morning, had a significantly lower risk of developing CKD. Their risk was reduced by about 13%, or 0.87. However, the same study found that patients who consumed coffee during the noon to evening and evening to dawn periods had an increased risk of CKD. Those drinking coffee in the evening had a staggering 35% increased risk, OR 1.35. It's not just that coffee protects or harms, it's about the timing. Coffee in the morning might be protective because it can help prime the body's circadian rhythms and metabolic pathways. But coffee late in the day, when insulin sensitivity naturally dips, worsens the metabolic insult. But the story gets even more complicated. Coffee is more than just caffeine. It contains hundreds of bioactive compounds. And while coffee intake seems beneficial, the actual plasma caffeine levels tell a different story. The same Mendelian randomization study that showed coffee intake was beneficial for eGFR also showed that higher plasma caffeine levels were causally linked to lower eGFR. That means the caffeine itself is potentially damaging to the kidneys. Another study confirmed this, showing that while coffee intake was associated with lower CKD risk, caffeine intake had the opposite effect. How does this happen? Caffeine is an adenosine receptor antagonist. When you drink coffee, caffeine binds to adenosine receptors in the kidney. What does this do? It changes the glomerular hemodynamics. It can cause an acute increase in glomerular filtration, what we call hyperfiltration. Now, you might think, hyperfiltration? That sounds like my kidneys are working great. But that's a dangerous misconception. This hyperfiltration is not a sign of health. It's an early marker of kidney injury. It's the kidney working under stress, pushing blood through the filters at a higher pressure than they can handle. This increased pressure damages the delicate filtering units over time, leading to albuminuria, protein in the urine, and scarring. This has been shown clearly. A study on caffeine metabolism found that heavy coffee drinkers, over 3 cups a day, who were slow metabolizers of caffeine, meaning the caffeine stays in their system longer, had an almost 3-fold increased risk of developing albuminuria and hyperfiltration. The genetic variation in the CYP1A2 gene determines whether you are a fast or slow metabolizer of caffeine. If you have the slow metabolizer genotype, that morning coffee or any coffee you drink throughout the day is causing a longer, more profound stress response on your kidneys. And what about adding sugar and cream? That is a disaster. If you are a diabetic patient, that sugary coffee will send your blood sugar skyrocketing, followed by a massive insulin spike. Over time, this is a recipe for disaster. In one Mendelian randomization study, looking specifically at diabetic nephropathy, coffee intake was found to be causally linked to a significant increase in the risk of the disease. The study also noted that the sugar and coffee mate loaded into many coffee drinks lead to elevated blood sugar, hyperkalemia, and oxidative stress, all of which are terrible for your kidneys. The constant drip, drip, drip of insulin spikes throughout the day damages the small blood vessels, and this microvascular disease is exactly what causes kidney failure. It damages the tiny blood vessels in the kidneys leading to scarring and a loss of function. So, your morning coffee, combined with the sugar and cream, and the constant stimulation of insulin, is the last thing you need. But I promised you one thing you can do to fix this instantly, and it's not to throw out your coffee. It's to stop the constant snacking and eating. The most powerful tool I have in my practice to reverse insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and protect the kidneys is fasting. That is the one thing. But Dr. Fung, you might say, I am fasting. I have my coffee in the morning, and I don't eat again until lunch. That's intermittent fasting, and it's a great start. But the real power of fasting doesn't come from just skipping breakfast. It comes from the length of the fast. Remember, the goal is to lower insulin. We need to give the body a break from the constant influx of glucose. It needs time to burn off the glycogen stores and switch to fat burning mode. For people with severe insulin resistance, like those with type 2 diabetes, a 16-hour fast might not be enough. This is because their bodies are so sick with hyperinsulinemia that their fasting insulin levels are still high. They are packing their cells full of fat, including their liver and pancreas. This is why we use longer periods of fasting, like 24 to 36 hours. The first 24 hours, your body is mostly burning glycogen. It's only after that, when you are in a state of glycogen depletion, that your body starts to break down proteins through a process called gluconeogenesis. This is where the magic happens. It's during this 24 to 36 hour window where autophagy, the process of self-eating, kicks in. Autophagy is the body's own cellular recycling program. It breaks down old damaged proteins and cellular components, which can then be used to build new ones. This is crucial. If you have a disease of too much growth, you need to stimulate autophagy. This process cleans out the junk and reduces inflammation. It helps the kidneys by clearing out the cellular debris that can contribute to damage. You cannot get autophagy through caloric restriction. You can't get it by eating a little bit of food. Any food at all will trigger an insulin response, and that turns off autophagy. This is why I'm not a fan of snacking on a keto diet. If you are fasting for weight loss, a ketogenic diet is fine. It lowers insulin and burns fat. But if you want the incredible benefits of cellular renewal, you need to get the autophagy. You need to give your body a break from food. Protein, especially animal protein, is a powerful stimulator of mTOR, the nutrient sensor that inhibits autophagy. You need to stop that signal for a prolonged period. Now, back to your morning coffee. If you want to maximize autophagy and truly protect your kidneys, you need to consider what breaks a fast. If you have a splash of cream in your coffee or a sweetener, you have broken your fast. You have triggered an insulin response. In my clinic, we often recommend a strict water-only fast, and we're very clear about the coffee. When patients ask, "Can I have a little black coffee?" I have to be honest. There is no data to tell us exactly how much protein or how little amino acid it takes to turn off autophagy or to trigger mTOR. The nutrient sensors are incredibly sensitive. That is the entire point. They are designed to detect any incoming nutrients and stop the cellular cleanup process. So for those patients who want to be certain they are getting the maximum benefits of autophagy, we tell them to do a water-only fast. If you absolutely must have coffee, fine, but the safest approach for kidney health and optimal autophagy is to avoid it during the fasting period. But what if I am just trying to lose weight, you might ask? That's a different goal. For weight loss, black coffee is probably fine. It doesn't have calories, and it won't break the caloric deficit. But if you have type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, or you are trying to reverse your kidney disease, your goal is more than just weight loss. Your goal is to remove the organ-damaging high insulin levels and clear out the cellular clutter in your kidneys. You cannot be half pregnant about this. Autophagy is the key, and the only way to guarantee autophagy is to avoid all triggers. We tell our patients who are fasting for healing, keep the goals in mind. Are you fasting for weight loss, or are you fasting to get off insulin and heal your organs? If it's the latter, you must be strict. This is a powerful tool. It is the single most effective intervention I have ever seen in my practice. Patients come in on hundreds of units of insulin, and with fasting, they can come off it completely. They regain their health. This isn't about willpower, it's about understanding the biology. When you eat, your insulin goes up. When you fast, it goes down. It's that simple. The constant stimulation of insulin from our modern eating patterns, 3 meals a day, plus snacks, is what is driving the kidney disease epidemic. Our bodies are not built for this constant feast. They are built for periods of fasting. By extending the time you don't eat, you give your kidneys and your entire body the time it needs to heal. It is the ultimate reset. And the timing of your coffee is just a symptom of the larger problem, which is the constant flow of food from dawn to dusk. If you want to protect your kidneys, you need to stop that flow. You need to embrace the power of fasting. And if you want to be absolutely certain that you are getting the maximum healing benefit, you will put down the coffee, drink your water, and give your body the gift of true, uninterrupted rest. That is the one thing you can do to start healing your kidneys instantly.